Testing, 1 2 3, testing, 1 2 3, testing, 1 2 3, testing, 1 2 3. No. Uh, no sound. No sound. I don't know what's going on. Testing, 1 2 3. Are we up here? Sound is good. All right. Is it a bit low? Let me see if I can get it up higher here. What about now? Is that better? Better? Sound is better. Let's see. Testing, 1 2 3, testing, 1 2 3. Can you hear me? Can you hear me? Still low? A little better? All right, let me just see. Guys, hold on with me just a bit here. Better? All right, good, fantastic, guys. So should I start from the beginning? All right, okay, good, okay, ciao. All right, traders. Listen, I apologize about that. But for some reason my sound wasn't working. But look, welcome to another live session with Oliver Velez. Of course, my name is Oliver Velez. I am beaming in to you live from Malaga, Spain. Here, I'm enjoying every single minute of my time in Spain. Enjoying every single minute of my ability to spend some time with my traders in this country and in the area. I've sort of been off of the live circuit over the past couple of weeks because of my time here, but I'm back, and I couldn't have picked a more powerful topic, traders. A topic that many of you understand by now has become very dear to me, has become a very integral, important part of my entire wealth approach to the markets. And I hope to be able to convince you, or at least to have you somewhat agree with my take on this very, very valuable asset called Bitcoin, and why I believe Bitcoin is the most powerful and the best trade of our lifetimes. I believe that Bitcoin is going to become the best trade of the era, the best trade of the decade, the best trade of our lifetimes. I truly believe that there is no other asset that will deliver, that not only has delivered over the past 10 years, but I believe that there is no other asset that will deliver like Bitcoin will deliver over the next 10 years, over the next 50 years, over the next 100 years. I believe this is it. And I hope by the end of this presentation, you at least understand why I believe that this is the case. All right. And if you have any doubts regarding this asset, I hope today, over the next hour or so, I'm able to remove a good many of those doubts. All right. In addition to that, I also do not want to leave the presentation without impressing upon you that despite the fact, traders, that I believe that Bitcoin is going to be the biggest generational wealth opportunity of our lifetime, of your lifetime, it is also going to be the most difficult trade of our lives. It is going to be the hardest trade to hold on to. But we're going to do our best to do that. And I'm going to do my best to convince you to do that yourselves. All right. So grab a seat, get comfortable, get something to write with. You'll probably want to take some notes regarding this today. Okay. All right. So let me do this here, guys. Let's get this reversed. So, of course, obviously our topic, Bitcoin, the biggest but the hardest trade of our lives. And here's why. Now, I believe, traders, that right now, as we are together this very moment, it's very bad spelling here, but Bitcoin is offering a generational wealth opportunity for us right now, right now. And I want to tell you why I believe that. This is my thesis. My thesis is this, that we have just started the decade of the 2020s. And it is my thesis that the decade of the 20s is actually repeating the decade of the 1970s. Now, listen to me carefully, guys. History almost never 100% repeats itself. But let's not make any let's not fool ourselves. While it doesn't repeat the past perfectly, it often rhymes. We can find times in the past that are very similar to what we're dealing with now. This is what charting is about. This is what looking back into history is all about. We look back into history because history can give us clues as to what we're dealing with today. And it is my belief that the decade of the 20s, the 2020s, are literally repeating the decade of the 1970s. Now, here's why I believe that's the case. Let's look at this. All right. Here are the similarities. We're right now at the beginning of the decade. So we're in 2022. That's the beginning, first couple of years of the decade. Now, at the beginning of the 1970s, the decade that I believe that we're repeating right now, there was great political divide. And I don't think that anyone listening to me today will argue about the fact that today, right now, there is tremendous political divide, and not just in the United States, but throughout the entire world. There is a divide amongst the political factions and groups in different countries. There's tensions between virtually every single nation on earth. All the political groups and factions are basically at war together, war with each other. I have, in my entire lifetime, I've never seen such a divide politically. All right. And the 1970s was very similar to that. We had great political divide, especially in the United States in the beginning of the in the 1960s, leading into the beginning of the 1970s. We also had great social unrest. There were the race wars. There was the racial conflict throughout the 1960s into the beginning of the 1970s. There were people marching on Wall Street, marching on Washington virtually every other day. All right. In Washington, in the beginning of the 1970s, there was the hippie movement, the woman power movement, still the Black power movement was going on. There was great social unrest. And some of you might remember, if you're old enough, the riots that went on in California and things of that nature. There was just great social unrest and a complete mistrust of the politicians and government as a whole. And today, throughout the entire world, we have the same thing that's going on now, but at a more feverish pace. We have political and social unrest throughout the entire world today. Not only in the United States did we see rioting, and did we see marching on Wall Street, and did we see protest after protest. We've seen the same thing go on in parts of South America. We saw the same thing go on in recently in Canada with the trucking protest, and we're seeing the same thing with the farmers in the Netherlands, and we're seeing great social unrest and complete discontent with the political environment and the leaders in power. All throughout Europe, we're seeing the same thing in Sri Lanka, in Turkey, in Lebanon, in India, all over the world. There's social unrest. We're repeating what the 1970s delivered. All right. International conflict was at an all-time new high in the late 60s going into the 1970s and the mid 1970s. We today have great international conflict. There's growing tensions between the US and China. Of course, we have always had the US and the Russian tensions, and the European Union's tensions with Russia and China and so forth and so on. We have war today, the same way we had in the 1970s. The Russian-Ukrainian conflict is at the top of the charts as far as international conflict and war. Guys, I am telling you, my thesis is that we are repeating the decade of the 1970s almost tick for tick. If you had to give the decade of the 1970s a name, you'd name it the decade of inflation. We have inflation problems today in the same way we had great inflationary problems and tensions in the United States and throughout major parts of the world in the decade of the 1970s as well. High gas prices. We had a crisis in the United States. I remember as a kid, my mother used to put me in the back of her sky blue Ford Pinto, and we would dash out right to the local gas station and try to get in line early. And she would make sure I had crayons and coloring books and things to keep myself occupied, because we were going to be in a gas line waiting our turn, hoping that by the time it was our turn to get to the pump, right, that there was going to be gas left. And so I remember this as a little kid in the early to mid 1970s, when we had high gas prices and a gas and a gas and high inflationary problems. And today, as far as the United States is concerned, guys, we've never had gas prices this high ever in the history of the United States. And it's a global problem as well. All right. All of this was basically, in my opinion, created by a big period of US money printing at the time. Throughout the 1960s, there was great programs that caused and a Vietnam War that was going on, and many programs that were instituted that caused the United States to have to constantly print dollars. This created a great concern amongst the rest of the countries throughout the world, especially those who use the United States as their custodian of their gold reserves. And at that particular time, the dollar was still pegged to gold. It was still backed, quote unquote, by gold, at least as far as countries were concerned. Because the US was printing money at such a feverish pace, all right? Because of this, guys, this caused great concern amongst countries like the UK and France. And many believed that the US was printing beyond the quantity of gold they had to back the dollars. And this caused great tensions, and it caused many countries to want to get their gold back. This shook America at its core. And then the depegging of the the dollar from gold, happened on August 15th of 1971. Now, you're going to quickly understand in a few minutes why this is important. All right. All of these things occurred in that occurred in the 1970s. They're happening to the T right now. And as many of you know, the US government in the last 2 years printed 50% of the entire world's dollar supply. It took 250 years, right? 250 years for the dollar supply to get to a certain level. And in 2 years, we doubled the entire global supply of US dollars. That took 250 years to get to that amount. That is an unprecedented amount of US money printing. This led to the depegging in the 1970s of the dollar from gold. And I believe that we're going to go through a similar depegging like thing, but this time it's going to be with Bitcoin. Now let's move on from here. I'm going to show you what's next here. Here was gold's response in the 1970s to all of the things we just mentioned. Gold's response to the political unrest, the social unrest, the inflationary problems, right? The printing of a lot of US dollars, the gas prices rising, all of these things created a response by the hardest money on the planet at the time. This is important to understand, traders. All right, this is important to understand what I'm saying. There was a response to all of this by gold once gold was made free, right? This response was an incredible response, and it's important that we understand that it was the hardest money that the world had at the time. And the hardest money that the world had at the time responded this way. Now take a quick look. This is an historical chart of gold's prices all the way back to starting from the late 1960s. Now, it's important to understand that before the first arrow on the left that you see, before that arrow, the US had the dollar pegged at $35 an ounce. It was pegged and permanently there. All right. You bought and you sold gold at a fixed rate of $35 an ounce. When the US began to print a lot of US dollars, many countries got concerned, and many countries, as you'll recall, would have their gold held by the United States. And in exchange for that gold, they were given US dollars. But the countries could actually request their gold back. And because the US was printing a lot of dollars, it made these countries that had gold in the United States very concerned, and they began one by one to request their gold back from the United States. This scared the United States, assumably because there wasn't enough gold to actually give back. And so what happened in August 15th of 1971? President Nixon permanently, he said temporarily, but permanently severed, all right, permanently severed the convertibility of the dollar into gold. Basically, he told every country in the world, forget you, all right? You can't get your gold back. Whatever gold you have with us is now ours. You have the equivalent in US dollars. Wow. At that particular point, no one could convert the dollar back into gold, all right, on planet Earth. The US disallowed it. In addition to that, gold's peg that was fixed at $35 an ounce gets removed at that arrow. And look at what happened to gold. Gold went from $35 an ounce, and throughout the decade of the 1970s, it went on an absolute financial tear. Nothing on planet Earth outperformed it. Nothing came close. It went on an unprecedented meteoric rise all the way to $835 an ounce. From $35 to $835. There was no asset ever in the history of the world that had that performance. There was no asset that ever came close to the performance of gold during the 1970s. And this was the response of the world's hardest, most secure form of money at the time. Now, if you look at the second arrow, this is late 2004, early 2005, when the US finally decided that it was going to approve a gold spot ETF. All right. And from this point, gold took on its secondary meteoric rise all the way to 1920. So there were two meteoric rising periods throughout gold's history. Once $35 ceiling was removed, It had that first meteoric rise, right, throughout the entire decade of the 1970s. Then we dulled out for a while. And then when a spot ETF was approved, it had that secondary meteoric rise all the way to 1920. Now, this is going to become important as we move on to the presentation, so don't forget that. Okay, now take a look at this. This was gold's first US spot ETF. It's the symbol is GLD. All right, this was approved in late 2004. I know this intimately because I had every single one of my traders pile into gold, pile into this ETF with virtually everything they did not need. I wanted my traders to put their money here. And I pounded the table on two things during this period. 2001, it was Amazon, and the next thing was gold right here in early 2005. And I had these two things that I pounded the table on and wanted my traders piling into for the next generational wealth buying opportunity. It was Amazon and gold. Boom. Those were my two main things. All right. At least for this decade. Every decade, I have a major wealth, generational wealth play. All right. During the 1990s, it was Microsoft and Apple. All right. Apple didn't start flourishing until later, but those were my two in the 1990s. The two in the 2000s was Amazon and gold. And if you actually go to my Facebook page and you scroll all the way to the beginning, you will see me pounding the table back in the late 2008, 2009 period on Facebook, telling all of my following, you got to still pile into gold. You got to still pile into gold. All right. So anyway, we piled into this. Now, I want you to see that GLD, once the spot ETF of gold was finally approved in the United States, it wasn't the first in the world. The US is always late to approve a spot ETF. That is their MO. They use the rest of the world as a beta test to get all of the legal things out of the way to see what can go right, what can go wrong. And this is why they're typically late. They're typically the last or one of the last to finally approve a spot ETF of a new item. Gold was a new item, remember, because it was typically pegged at 35. When it was made free, it became a freely tradable item. All right. And so they were late to approve it, but they finally approved it in late 2004. We piled in, and this gold ETF or gold went on a 6.5-year run. Now, remember, the first run was from 1971 onward. The secondary run started here, mid-2000s, all the way into 2011 before topping out. Okay, this is important. You'll see as we move forward why this is so important to understand. Bitcoin, my first thesis is that we are repeating the 1970s tick for tick. Okay, the 2020s are repeating the 1970s, the years during the 1970s. Gold was the asset that responded to what was going on in the 1970s. Gold was the hardest, the best money the world had. You always look to what the best money does. In the world of currencies, the best currency money is the dollar. You always look to what the dollar's doing. In the asset money or the commodity money world, gold is the best money. You look to what gold does. So my first thesis is that we're repeating the 1990s. All right. I mean, we're repeating the 1970s, sorry. Today, we're repeating the 1970s, and the best money gold, the best commodity money, gold, responded extraordinarily well to what was going on in the 1970s. Today, it is the baton has been passed to Bitcoin. Gold no longer has the baton. Please understand my point here. It was gold because gold was the best at that time. We have a better item. We have a digital form of gold for today's digital society. We have left the analog world. We've left the analog physical world and have moved to a digital dematerialized world, which requires that we have a brand new form of sound money, and that is Bitcoin. And so Bitcoin has taken the baton from gold and is now going to move forward the same way that gold responded to what was going on in the 1970s. The new gold, Bitcoin, is, in my opinion, going to respond to what is going on in the 2020s. The baton has been passed. Let's take a look at Bitcoin's takeover of gold. Now, if we go back to this gold ETF here, which basically replicates what the real gold price is doing, I want you to notice where gold topped out. It topped out in 2011. You see that? It topped out in 2011. And I want you to go all the way to the right now. What you're looking at is where I took this graph today, this image today. This is today's price. Now, look at the fact that gold topped out in 2011 and it lost an entire decade, which means that it did not make any progress this whole decade. This is 11 years, 2011 to 2022, 11 years, lost a whole decade. This is very important to understand. Why did gold all of a sudden stop doing what it's supposed to do? Why was this decade lost? Because it passed the baton to its newer, younger, more vibrant partner, Bitcoin. Now look at the circle on the far left. What year is that? 2011. Now go back. Don't forget this. Let's go back. Gold tops out in 2011. Bitcoin takes off in 2011. Wow. Bitcoin comes alive or is birthed in 2009, but it doesn't really have a price until late 2010. Boom, once it gets a price, gold passes the baton to Bitcoin. And while gold, remember guys, look at this, gold takes a dip after passing the baton. For many years, Bitcoin takes off the whole while. Traders, the baton has been passed. Gold is that 95-year-old guy in a wheelchair that is extraordinarily wealthy, that people respect because of all the success this elderly gentleman had. Do you understand? But it no longer can do what everyone respects it for. It deserves our respect. For 5,000 years, gold deserved our respect. For 5,000 years, it was real money. For 5,000 years, it kept governments in check. For 5,000 years, it served as the hardest and the best form of decentralized money. Governments couldn't make it. Governments couldn't print it at will. It deserves our respect. But it's the 95-year-old guy that you still respect. It's the Warren Buffett of commodity money. Time is over. Finished. We respect your past. We respect how amazing you were. But this is not your world anymore. We're in a digital world today, guys. We're not in an analog world. Analog assets do not work anymore. When I used to buy stocks, I used to actually get the stock certificate and sign the back of it. I used to keep my stock certificates, guys. In the 1980s, I had them in files. My McDonald's, my Coca-Cola, my Eli Lilly. These, I had the stock certificates. Do you have stock certificates today? Do I have stock certificates today? Where are my stocks? They're nowhere. That's the digital world we're in. My mother used to bore the neighbors every time they came over, and she would whip out the albums under the coffee table, the photo albums, and show dozens of pictures of me and her when I was little. There's no albums, there's no real photo albums under your coffee table anymore. You and I have thousands of digital photos on our phone. You can't touch them, you can't feel them, you can only digitally see them. We've got digital mail today. We don't write letters and put a stamp on it and mail it anymore. That's analog. We have email. We don't have vinyl records or CDs or cassette tapes anymore. We have streaming videos. We don't go to Blockbuster to get our videos anymore, our movies anymore. We've got Netflix and 100 other streaming networks. You can't touch a movie today, hold it, pass it off to someone. It's in the ether. It's digital. Money today needs to be digital. It can't be physical anymore. And the very things that we value the most have a non-physical reality to them. The most precious things we have are non-physical: loyalty, honesty, love, freedom, decency, happiness. You understand what I'm saying? We're in a digital world, and gold was the best of the analog world. It passed the baton, and rightfully so, to the new digital version of itself. And you see it in the charts. Gold gave up the baton in 2011. Today, 11 years later, gold is down like 4% over the last 11 years. Bitcoin is up 480,000% since gold passed the baton to Bitcoin. Powerful. What gold did in the 1970s, Bitcoin, it is my thesis that Bitcoin is going to do the same thing in the 2020s. We've seen the movie, or we've read about it if you weren't born there. We know what the best money does. Gold gave us the picture of what the best money does under this scenario, under high inflation, under a big amount of currency printing, under international conflict, social unrest, high gas prices, the whole mixture of things. We've seen the picture before. We've seen the movie, but it's not gold that's going to respond this time. It might respond a little bit, just like a 95-year-old in a wheelchair can still move a little bit, but not like the young teenager. Bitcoin is the teenage version of gold. And I believe it's going to deliver as powerful as its last 10 years were. It is going to put, in my opinion, the last 10 years to shame, because we've only just begun. We've only just begun the beginning of the 1970s. 2020 is the brand new 1970s. All right, so take a look at this. All right, here's Bitcoin's current place in the world. After only 13 years in existence, 13, 14 years in existence, right, guys? Bitcoin is the 14th most valuable asset in the world. Just take that in just for a second, guys. In only 13, 14 years, Bitcoin has risen past companies and assets that have been in existence for decades. In 13 years, it became the 14th most valuable asset on planet Earth. All right. Now look at where gold is still the most valuable asset in the world on planet Earth. Apple, outside of gold, is the second most valuable, and so forth and so on. Look at where silver is. Silver is number 7. Gold, Bitcoin, after a 70+% decline from all-time new highs, it's number 14. When it was near its all-time high, it was number 6 on the list. But that'll be returning. All right. But it's important to understand where Bitcoin is in terms of value in the world today. It's 14th in the world. That's amazing. Now check this out. I believe my third thesis, I've given you 2 theses so far, and this is my third thesis, is that Bitcoin has several buy stop points. And I'll explain what they are. But let's quickly review what the thesis is. Thesis number 1, the 2020s is duplicating the 1970s. Thesis number 2, all right, gold responded to everything that was going on in the 1970s in a meteoric way and became the best performing asset in the history of the world at that time. Okay. Thesis number 3 is that Bitcoin is the new gold and will repeat what gold did in the 1970s this decade. And this thesis is stating that Bitcoin has specific trigger points that will accelerate its move higher and higher. So let me quickly explain to you what a buy point is, or a buy stop is. When you place a buy stop in the market, you're saying that I am not willing to buy under this price, but I'm willing to buy above this price. So a buy stop on a stock that's trading at $19. So let's say a stock is trading at $19 and you have a buy stop at $20. So as long as it stays under $20, you don't want to buy it. But if it breaks above $20, you automatically want to buy it. That's what a buy stop is. Stop me into the item once this price gets superseded. That's what a buy stop is. Well, Bitcoin, in my opinion, this is my thesis, has these buy stop points above it. And that once these prices hit, you get brand new buyers coming in that will move it to the next level. So let me talk about or explain what Bitcoin's buy stop points are, in my opinion. All right, let's do this. First one, 62,000. 62,000 at the Bitcoin currently is trading around 23,000. 20. Whoa, it's up nicely today. Wow. Whew, 23. Wow. Okay. Might want to show you that. Might have to show you that here, guys. Wow. 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 Okay. Um, Bitcoin is trading at 23. All right. It must know that I am giving you this presentation today. Yeah, that's it. That's it. Okay, guys. So look, Bitcoin is currently trading at 23, almost 23,700. All right. Nice move over the last few days here. Okay. Now, check this out. At 62,000, Bitcoin becomes more valuable than all the silver on earth. Now, silver has served as some form of money for the last 9,000 years. That's crazy. And in 13, 14 years, Bitcoin actually is not that far off from becoming more valuable than all the silver on earth. Now, we know that Bitcoin traded as high as 69,000, but currently, if and when Bitcoin surpasses 62,000, it is more valuable than all the silver on earth. Now, this will be noteworthy. This will be noteworthy and grab major attention and cause more people to come in. At 70,000, we know that Bitcoin reaches an all-time new high. Every all-time new high that's taken out creates a manic-like rush into any asset, but especially this one. A major acceleration past 70,000, in my opinion, will occur once 70,000 is taken out. But more importantly than that, once 70,000 is taken out, I believe that the group of people in the world that formerly had doubts about Bitcoin, that formerly believed that Bitcoin is dead, never to come back again, that will not happen again. That those who are calling for Bitcoin to go to zero will basically die out. All right. The reason I believe that is because Bitcoin has garnered worldwide global attention like it never has before this past cycle. There's no politician that gets on a television set or gets in front of an audience that is not asked about Bitcoin. There's no president on planet Earth that is not asked about Bitcoin. There's no financial institution that's not asked about Bitcoin. That Bitcoin has come into the world consciousness in the biggest way that it ever has before. All eyes are on it. And once, if and when it takes out its all-time new high, the world is going to wow. And this move, despite the fact that Bitcoin has taken out its all-time new high always, it's this one that's going to be the biggest one. It's this one that's going to create the mad rush. Why? Because in all other times in the past, the world wasn't so focused like it is now. There's not a single person with any meaning on planet Earth that's not aware of this. Okay? There's no organization that's not aware of this. There's no government that's not aware of this. Everyone's thinking about Bitcoin, watching it. And this all-time new high break is going to create a mad rush into the asset and remove a lot of the doubt that continues to surround the asset. At 125,000, Bitcoin becomes the most valuable asset on earth outside of gold. So once Bitcoin surpasses 125,000, and it will, in my opinion, whenever that happens, it becomes the most valuable asset on earth. Now, listen to me. Whenever something gets in the top five, almost everyone has to own it. I want you to understand that in the financial world, you can't not own something in the top five. And when something becomes the most valuable asset in the world, no financial organization, no financial expert, no one cannot own it. Do you know what the most owned asset on planet Earth is right now? Apple. Now, why is that? Because Apple's the most valuable asset on planet Earth right now outside of gold. Every money manager owns Apple. Every mutual fund owns Apple. Every financial organization that has a balance sheet of investments owns Apple. Every single person. And virtually every single person in the market has it. If you have an index fund, you own Apple indirectly. And so at 125, Bitcoin takes over the role of being the most valuable asset on planet Earth outside of gold, which means that every single organization has to go into it. If you didn't have it under 125, you got to have it above 125. This is what I mean by these buy stop points. These points are going to accelerate, in my opinion, the price of Bitcoin meteorically. The next price we have to deal with is 150. I believe that before 150, and certainly by 150, we've got to have a spot ETF. Traders, you saw what gold did for 6.5 years after a spot ETF was approved. That secondary meteoric rise in gold happened after it had a spot ETF. This is not a question of whether or not Bitcoin's going to get a spot ETF. It's just a question of when. And I believe it's a great possibility we get this next year. But certainly we need it. We will have it before 150. And that means that everyone's going to allocate 1 to 5% of their financial portfolio to this asset. Remember, once something becomes in the top five, it's almost like it has to be owned. And certainly it has to be owned once it becomes the number one asset in the world outside of gold. And that happens at 125. And you've got to have a spot ETF on the most valuable asset in the world. And what's next? 600,000. Guys, listen to me carefully. At 600,000, Bitcoin becomes the more valuable than all the gold on planet Earth. That's crazy. Now, let me explain to you why this is important. Every major country in the world uses gold as the cornerstone of their balance sheet, as the cornerstone of the country's financial legitimacy and solidity and stability. Gold is the number one item held. It's what gives their currency legitimacy. Any country that has a currency that does not have a sizable gold reserve is not a respected currency. Countries must hold gold to even be, for their currency to even be looked at. Do you understand this? So what do you think is going to happen, traders? What do you think is going to happen when Bitcoin becomes more valuable than the very thing that every country on the globe must hold on their balance sheet? Who becomes the buyers then? Every single country in the world must buy Bitcoin above 600,000. It's still tiny now. It's still small, but that is our benefit. You don't wait for something to get big, then do it. You get it early. Scouts found scouts in the sporting world, they're looking for the next greats at 8 years old, at 10 years old. They're in grade school sporting events looking for the next Michael Jordan. Do you understand? They're at soccer and football meetups with 8-year-olds and 9-year-olds looking for the next Messi. They're not waiting for you to become Michael Jordan and then try to get you. The same way, we've got the teenage gold, not the 5,000-year gold. We're getting it as a teenager. We're getting Michael Jordan at 13 years old. Do you understand? We're getting Messi at 13 years old before it actually responds in a big way to everything that's going on right now. These things take time, but the time is now, in my opinion. This is crazy, guys. This is the generational buy opportunity of a lifetime. We will, in my opinion, never see an opportunity like this ever again in your entire life. There will not be one. No, 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 no. Not like this. That's my opinion. All right. I'm just a guy on the internet. So please understand, guys, this is not investment advice. I am just telling you or sharing with you what I believe and what I'm doing. And I'm hoping you want to take this journey with me. I'm really hoping that you do. All right. So anyway, the same way I wanted traders taking the Apple journey with me in the 1990s, the Amazon journey with me in 2001, the gold journey with me in 2005, the Bitcoin journey with me as of 2020, when we first started this project here. All right. All right. So at 150, Bitcoin ETF must be approved, in my opinion. 600,000. Every country in the world must have Bitcoin on the balance sheet to solidify their currency, to give legitimacy to their currency. And then the sky's not even the limit. From there, when every single country has to have it, that's already started with El Salvador. That's already started with several other countries. If you don't believe me, just Google countries that own Bitcoin. The United States is one of the biggest owners of Bitcoin on the list of countries. You don't believe me? Google it. Google U.S. government owns Bitcoin. You'll see quietly. Okay. What's next here? Generational wealth opportunity is now, guys. The generational wealth opportunity is now. And here's technical evidence. And once I present some brief technical evidence for you, I'm going to let you go. But I've got to get this. I've got to get this done. Here's some of the technical things I look at that gives me high confidence that this is the time now. No waiting. Check this out. Check this out. First thing, throughout Bitcoin's history, the weekly 200 period moving average, the area of the 200 weekly period moving average, has served as significant support and therefore has offered a generational wealth building opportunity. This is a generational buy point. It hasn't come in contact with its 200 period moving average many times throughout its history. But when it has, go all the way back to the left. When it has, oh my God, look at the beginning of 2012. Boom, look at the meteoric rise. At that point, Bitcoin was trading at what? Looks like, I don't know, a few dollars. All right, so let's say it's $6. It goes from $6 to over $1,000. Oh my God. The next time it comes in contact with its 200 period moving average, We're in 2015. That's at around, I think it's $200, 199 to be exact. It goes from $199 to $20,000, 199 to 20,000. The very next time it comes into contact is in 2018. All right, and then 2019 again. But in that range, we're in the low to mid 3,000. It goes from 3,200 to 69,000. That's crazy. Now we're back at the 200 again. Now, some people say, well, Oliver, it's under the 200. Remember, the 200 period moving average is not a skinny line. The chart is lying to us when it shows us a skinny line. It should show us a band. The 200, if you picture it like a ribbon, and the skinny line is in the middle of the ribbon, if I could show you something, it's not this, it's this. So if you fatten the 200 a bit, you realize that these seeming breaks are not breaks, that the moving average is more like a fence that you can lean on. Do you understand? You can lean on it. It appears as though the ropes are going to break, and boom, the fence or the ropes swing you back. So these are not violations. In 2020, you see that blue dot? That's not a violation. You see the blue dot now in 2020? That's not a violation. That's leaning on the boxing ropes. We couldn't have a better accumulation zone here. The generational wealth opportunity is now. No waiting. All right, here's another indication. I'm not going to go into the details of what these indicators are, but too much, because we've got limited time here, guys. But look, here's the 2-year moving average. I look at the 2-year moving average, and I put a multiplier of 5 on each side of the 2-year moving average. So think of the 2-year moving average running in the middle of this band, but the red line at the top, the upper part of the band is multiplying that moving average times 5 above it, and then the green is a 5 multiple below it. Okay, and so each time throughout history, Bitcoin has dropped below the lower band of that 2-year moving average. Wow, what a generational buy opportunity. Now, it can stay under there for a bit, but the longer it stays under, the better, because it gives us time to accumulate more. You get a paycheck and you throw $5 in, you get another paycheck, you throw $20 and $10 in here, whatever, and you accumulate during these times. These are wealth generational buying opportunities, and the time is now. Okay. Here is the Bitcoin rainbow price. It's similar to what I just showed you. And so throughout the history, you can see every time Bitcoin is in the reddish area or goes past the band, it's a bit hot. It's a bit overextended. Everyone's in profitable territory. So that's going to bring potentially some profit taking, which brings it out of the red and typically all the way back down to the blue. Where are we? Back down in the blue. Look at each time Bitcoin has dropped into the blue. Generational wealth building opportunity. Let me just tell you this, guys. Do you know what $1,000 invested in Bitcoin all the way back to the beginning of this rainbow? I think it's something like $96 million today. That's at today's price. That's crazy. 1,096 million. That's crazy. I believe that in the future, the next decade, in 2031, 2032, we're going to look back 10 years back, The same way we're looking 10 years back now, we're going to look 10 years back. We're looking 10 years back to 2012. It's 2022. In 2032, we're going to look back to 2020 and we're going to be pointing and say, see, it was in the blue. And if you bought there, it would have been a generational buy opportunity. We're going to be saying the same thing, in my opinion. Not financial advice. I'm just a guy on the internet, but you know what I'm saying. All right. Wow. How many things do we need to see? Here's the realized price, guys. Very quickly, realized price. You can look at this yellow line as saying, where is the average price of everyone's Bitcoin purchase throughout history? And so what this yellow line says that when Bitcoin is above that price, all right, the majority of people are in profits throughout the history of Bitcoin. If you're below that price, the majority of people just dipped into negative territory. You have more people negative than positive, right? And historically, whenever the majority go negative, has been a generational buy opportunity. But that's typically the case with any asset. It's when everyone's profitable, your asset is susceptible to a price decline because there's a greater tendency to take profits. But when everyone is negative, it's typically, you're typically closer to the end of that decline because in order to go negative, you must have been declining. You must have been declining. You must have been declining. And now everyone's negative. And when everyone goes negative, you're typically at the end. We've been declining for 6-7 months. We're now closer to the end than we are to the middle. And certainly we're not even close to the beginning of the decline. All right. But if you go back and pass, each time we're under this yellow line, wow, the timing is perfect. All right. I also take a look at realized market cap. It's very, I think I have to move myself here. I'll move myself over here so you can see it. But again, without going into great details, guys, this is more like this is based off the market cap of Bitcoin. Bitcoin has 19 million some odd Bitcoin in circulation today times the current price, yada, yada, yada. But without going into specific details, that's more for my Bitcoin members where we go into specific details regarding these things. But if you look back throughout history, each time this indicator has dipped into the green, it has made anyone who acted there extraordinarily wealthy. We're right now at a generational spot, a generational wealth building spot, in my opinion. If history is any guide, and history is always a guide, not always correct, but it's the only guide we have, right? It's the only guide we have. Okay. And this is the last thing I want to show you here, guys. It's profitable days. Now, this is an interesting take on things, right? Because what this is showing you is how many days based on yesterday's price, how many days based on yesterday's price are we profitable? So all of the past is profitable. The only portion that's not profitable is obviously over the last few months. But if we move out of this generational buy zone and start moving up, more and more of that red, not at the moment, please, more and more of that red gets turned into green. All right. So this is a really interesting take on Bitcoin's price. Almost done with you guys here. Almost done with you. And so, guys, look, what I've done is I've taken the current price today and giving you a picture of what could happen. It's not a picture of what's going to happen. We don't know. But if history's any guide, over the next decade, over this next decade, if my thesis is correct, that Bitcoin is going to be the new gold that responds to the environment of what's going on now, the same way gold responded to the environment in the 70s, this is what gold did. And Bitcoin, if my thesis is correct, is the new gold. And the 2020s is the new 1970s. Oh my God. Gold went from 35 to 835. Will Bitcoin go from 23 to 2 million, a million, 3 million, 10 million? It's not a zero probability. I will tell you this in closing. I believe that Bitcoin is the best wealth building asset we will ever see in our lifetime, our whole lifetime. I don't care how young you are. I believe you will never see another asset that has the ability to build wealth the way this asset does. But as the title said, it will be the hardest asset of all, the hardest trade of all. Why? Because it's volatile. Now, there are ways to turn its volatility into your friend. There are ways to not be frightened about the volatility and to use the volatility to become even wealthier with our approach. These are the things I want to go over with you. There are ways to protect yourself on the downside. It's a little early for that now, but later Bitcoin gets to 200, 300,000. There are ways that we're going to protect ourselves on the downside. There are ways we're going to use the futures market to isolate the downside without even having to sell the most valuable asset on earth. There are going to be ways to generate some income on the asset itself so that you never have to sell the most valuable asset on earth. There are going to be these really fascinating things we can do with the most valuable asset on earth, but its volatility will be super high on the way to world dominance, in my opinion. And that is something that we have to learn how to stomach. That is something we have to learn how to navigate. And the majority of people will not be able to navigate it without some type of impetus, without some type of motivation, without some type of guide. I want to be that guide with you. I help my traders hold on to Amazon throughout 280% declines, 190+% decline, and 18 different 30 to 50% declines throughout the history of our play. Do you understand? And so, wow. Is this possible? Let's hope so. Is it impossible? No, it's not a zero possibility here. It's not a zero probability. And so, guys, look, here it is. Every 6 months, I open the doors to my Bitcoin trading club. It's open, but only for the next few days. I open it, the club fills up, I close the doors until the next 6 months. I believe that the time is so sensitive, you do not want to wait for the next 6 months. All right? In this club, we're going to meet multiple times every single month. We're going to stay in touch with each other. You're going to know every single thing I do, every purchase, every move, every aspect. We're also going to have classes. Many of these classes happen every single week. Some of them happen bi-weekly. This is designed to become the best Bitcoiner that we can become over with the most valuable, what we believe will become the most valuable asset in the world, right? We will become the best Bitcoiners. This is what we focus on in this club. But with my guidance in terms of everything I'm doing, every move I'm making, creating things like buy pyramids and taking advantage of buy stops and learning the specific events to take advantage of on the Bitcoin chart. These are things that we're going to walk through this Bitcoin journey step by step together. All right. Now, take a quick look here. Some of the benefits are you're going to get 6 months of training and guidance. We just talked about that. I have a very detailed 5-step trading plan. You put these 5 steps into place and you'll be playing Bitcoin like an absolute professional. Many of my Bitcoiners over the past 2 years have done extraordinarily well putting these 5 steps together. All right. We'll have frequent Bitcoin talk sessions. You'll be part of a very private Facebook community. My personal buys and sells, you'll see various accounts. All right. What I'm doing with those accounts, those are real accounts. And we'll have fixed bi-weekly study sessions. All right. I'm convinced that over the next 6 months, you're going to be extraordinarily happy that you started now. Remember the charts I showed you. Remember the indicators. Remember the time in the decade at which we are right now, right? The time is now. You can't wait on this thing. You can't wait on this. All right. These are some of the things that we do and will be doing in the next several sessions, right? So we'll be doing what's the 5 best hot wallets to put your Bitcoin on? What's the 5 best desktop wallets? What's the 5 best cold storage solutions? KYC exchanges, non-KYC exchanges. What's the best arguments for Bitcoin against Bitcoin? So you'll be able to talk to your friends and your family members and so forth and so on. All of these things we go over. This is designed to make you the best group of Bitcoiners out there, right? Education is key, guys. And if we're going to be dealing with what may and will likely become the most valuable asset in the world, you have to get educated about the asset. All right. Got to know what you're dealing with. Now, guys, look, the lifetime membership is normally $3,000. I think this is the best value of all. It's under $500 for life, which means that as long as I'm alive and as long as you're alive, we're together in this thing, step by step. We're taking this journey together. Every move together, every action together. We're going to do this thing together the right way, the same way I did with my traders, with Microsoft, Apple, Amazon, gold. Now it's Bitcoin's turn. And every single one of those created some very wealthy individuals. All right. 6 months membership. If you just want to do 6 months, all right, it's 50% off here. It's under $150. Trust me, guys. In one session, you will blow away the value of $150, right? And there you have it, guys. Only open for a few days. This fills up fast. I don't like an extraordinarily big group. Close the doors until the next 6 months, all right? And so I do want to make you aware of the fact that, guys, I need you to take a snapshot of this or something or come back to it, because I don't want you dealing with someone who's pretending to be me or pretending to be one of my people. Here's the list. If you're not dealing with one of these individuals, it's not from my organization. There's a lot of phony accounts, a lot of false attempts to get you to send money to the wrong account or the wrong individual. Please be careful. We live in a digital world. This is what we have to deal with. The onus is on you to be very responsible and be very sure. All right. And one of the best ways that you can get in contact with me is to DM me on my Twitter account, OLVelez007. Make sure you're dealing with me. There are no periods in that. There are no dashes. Make sure it's 007 and not things like 007. There's a lot of tricks that these false accounts are using to try to dupe my following. I'm not the only one this is happening to. It's happening all over the industry, guys. So you've got to be careful. Keep your money safe. Be extra careful. And if you're in doubt and need absolute verification, contact me, DM me on Twitter if you like. All right. Um, and there you have it, guys. The wait is over. BitcoinOliverVelez.com. I strongly encourage that if anything I talked to you about today has resonated with you, has touched you in any way, do this at least for 6 months. Try to do it for a lifetime, because this is our lifetime asset. This is our lifetime opportunity here. And let's do this together. But if you can't do it for a lifetime, do it for 6 months. Get the foundation under your belt. Get yourself moving in the right direction, doing the right thing with this life-changing asset. And understand, guys, that the time is now. I've shown you the charts. I've shown you the indications. I've shown you my thesis, or shared my thesis with you. We've got this decade to make it right for ourselves. This, in my opinion, is life-changing, and your children's children will thank you for this. I want to thank you all, guys, for attending. I know that there are many things that you could be doing with your time right now. You could be, I don't know, walking your dog around the block, playing with your kids, shopping at the mall, walking on the beach, what have you, but you're here with me. And so, guys, each and every time I do grab a mic, I want you to understand that I try my best to deliver something of value. Whether you join me or not, I want you to walk away with something that is thought-provoking, something that is potentially life-changing for you in your market play, in your trading, in your perspective. I'm hoping I've done that today. I'm very sorry that I have to go. My time is limited, but you'll be able to watch this presentation over and over again if you like. Hit the like button if you haven't subscribed yet. All right, please do so. All right, leave a comment. It certainly helps the algorithm. I appreciate that. Click the bell in the upper right-hand corner, wherever that is. Make sure you have all notifications on. I promise I will be getting back to our live weekly sessions, the live Q&A and the live technical analysis. These two things are very, very big hits here on the channel. I'll be getting back to those things starting next week. In the meantime, enjoy the rest of your day, your morning, your afternoon, your evening, wherever you are in the world, and know that you are a big part of the reason that I breathe in and out every single day. Thank you very much, traders. Ciao for now. Boom, boom, boom. Another one. Love it. Yeah. Woo. Ciao, guys.